Hello, good morning. I wanted to talk today a little bit about something different, or at least I want to introduce something different. I'm making these videos over the last few years simply because I think it's nice to share something back to people who have helped me online, or in general, don't mind talking about some of the stuff that I'm doing. I have no commercial interest, and I don't want to have any commercial interest in making these videos, so the production quality is quite low, and I will continue doing that. But I did get the feeling that people like these videos, especially around release dates, and I think providing some information is helpful. Now, what I want to do is start a little bit of a project, and this is kind of the introduction video of it, talking and creating a bug list for Sony. Now, some of the videos which will be coming next might be seen as critical, and if somebody comments on it, I will point them back to this video explaining what we are doing and why we are doing it. Because what I will do, I will start a series of small videos, and they will be quite small, not to get more hits, because I actually don't care too much about the number of hits that I get. There's no commercial value for me in it at all. But because if I describe a small feature or a bug that I'm seeing, and I will showcase it, by making it short, I can easily update them later, or even remove them, or somehow make clear that this bug has been solved. At the same time, I've been talking with some people who have contact with Sony. I will provide a nice Google Doc, which I will also link, describing the features and the bugs that I think they can add, and how easy or difficult it will be for them to add. Now, am I qualified for doing that? Well, let's first talk a little bit about the feedback that Sony got so far and how they reacted on it. I know there are several brands, and there's one brand which always gets a lot of credit for doing software updates, and I think that's wonderful, but I think if you look at I wouldn't say the facts, but the way that Sony has been operating in the last few years, I think it's quite impressive. So anything I say has nothing to do with the quality of the camera, in this case the a7r III, because I think for a first release of this camera they did very well. There are not that much sort of irritating bugs. If I compare to some of the releases of the competition, I think they're doing a fine job, and they should be proud of their work. But there are bugs in there, and there are small things where you think on, why did they do this, or why didn't they do that? And that's kind of the thing that I'm sort of talking about. I've tried to make something like this before, but somehow you always get stuck in, let's say, a video, the 10 things that Sony should do, or the 10 things that are bad, or whatever, right? Some of these are mostly to get hits, because it kind of has a catchy title, and I'm not sure how to title this one, because in a way it is handy that people see it, but that's again not my goal, because then you will watch only one of them and they will probably never watch it, so that doesn't really help. About if Sony reacts in general. I am personally, and I think if you are a Sony shooter, I think you will probably agree with me, I am quite impressed with a7r III, not only with the camera, but also the way they are taking feedback from, let's call them online or reviewers, right? So not regular users like me, but just the reviewers that we all know and love to watch their videos. They invite them in different places and pay for their trips and get reviews from them. There is of course something going on there that's totally fine, I have nothing against that. But it's also clear that Sony sends engineers and they talk to the reviewers. And if you just look at what they have changed, they might not release so many firmware updates, but if you look what they have changed over the last few years, then it's quite impressive. So for example, I would argue that of the 10 things that reviews have been, let's say, complaining about, I think Sony solved 7 or 8 of them in this camera. And of course there will be a new list, because there's always new stuff to complain about. But I think in general, arguing that Sony doesn't take any feedback is, I think, silly. I do think there is an area where normal reviewers, because they have so many units that they are playing with and a certain amount of depth and a commercial, let's say, value of going really deep into a bug or a feature is not really handy for them or doable for them. And I think the second step what Sony could do is actually take much more a closed loop to user groups. So for example, I'm posting this on the Facebook group for the a7r III, done by Sony Rumors, I think is the owner. I think there is value that as a community we also provide feedback, and I am fully convinced that either by one of the let's call them pathways that I and maybe others have to Sony, that they will react on it, maybe not openly, but I'm pretty sure they will see some of these things and will put them hopefully in a firmware update. If not, they will hopefully put them in the next release of the camera. So that's kind of the thing. Now, when I'm going to suggest features, I'm not going from nothing. My work is a software designer. I've designed software and hardware in the past. I've been doing that for 30 years. I'm just saying this so that people have some kind of a context on what I'm going to do and also what kind of information I will be providing back to them. I've done DSP programming. I've programmed the OS that's inside this, the core OS, which is in this case Android. So I think I have a pretty good gut feeling about if it's a simple feature or a difficult feature, how doable it is, and kind of guessing and maybe already pre-selecting some of the things that I think are very doable and how they can change that. For my normal work, I also need to think a lot about which, in my opinion, especially product designers and managers and lead developers need to do. I also think quite a lot about interaction design and what would actually help and make sense. So I'm not saying this to prop myself up, but I am saying that the list that I can make, I think together with you guys or with other people commenting on these small videos, which again I will then sort of convert into a Google Doc that can be sent to Japan and to Sony, and combined with some of these videos showing some of the bugs, because seeing a bug or a feature on video is different from reading about it, but the other way is also true. Reading about a feature request is also sometimes more helpful. My English is far from perfect, and some of these Japanese engineers of course are not always that great in English, so I think the combination will work out best. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in this video, and I will be sending people back to this video if need be, because again I think the quality of what they did is quite good, but I do think it would be very nice if either in a firmware update or if need be, and again it's probably not up to the engineer to decide if it's going to be a feature in a new camera or it will be something that they can retrofit in using firmware, but providing the information back, just seeing how much of the problem Sony has worked on, and basically nobody can claim that they are not reacting to feedback from the reviewers, is I think very helpful. To make this, in my opinion, already quite extraordinary product even more extraordinary, or provide input to them. Last thing I want to say, and I know I'm already a little bit rambling, and if you're still with me, thank you. Keep in mind that as a software engineer, if you are talking to client or even to product managers, you always have to keep in mind that something that looks easy to fix might turn out to be difficult, and something that seems difficult is actually quite easy to fix. This is just kind of a general rule in software design, and maybe even in hardware design, but definitely in software design, because it's very difficult for an outsider to predict why something is not being implemented or why something is easy to implement. for example, because you already prepared lots of the code, or you can see a neat trick, or just somebody asking you something sets you on a mind trail. They say, well, I can't do this, but I can do this. That would also solve it, right? So we have to keep in mind that we are providing this information with sort of a guess that I think this is easy to fix or this should be doable, but we are not the software designers. We don't know some of the limitations of what they can do in memory and temperature control and stuff like that. And CPU power. We can only guess, right? We are not the developers. We are not the product managers. So it's a best effort from our side that I might say in these videos, this should be really easy to fix. This should be really easy to fix. Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do it? Maybe they have thought about it for days and they just couldn't do it, or they are still pondering what will be the bad or side effects of a certain action. So that's kind of the last thing I wanted to add. And just as an example of that, one thing, and it will probably be my first that I'm going to make. For years I've been wondering, why don't they add the leveler and the histogram at the same time? It seems very obvious to do, and other brands are doing it, and we've been asking Sony directly or indirectly for years, why can't I have a histogram and the leveler in the EVF for sure, but also on the back screen at the same time? To me, it doesn't make any sense. Before I thought maybe it has to do with CPU power, that they can't do both things at the same time, but this camera is way faster than the old one, so that kind of does make sense. And it's a good example of something that I might have talked about several times internally, and there's just a technical reason why they can't do it at this time, or they can't do it at all. And it's not up to us to be the final answer in this. What we can do is kind of ask the question and ponder out loud, why aren't you doing this? So thanks for watching, and yeah, today I will try to already do a few videos. I'm releasing this in December 2017, basically around the release time of the a7r III. Because I'm running into some of these, let's say, feature requests and bugs, and B, because lots of people are now searching the internet for videos because they are either still waiting for the camera to arrive or they just got it. And of course, very understandable, they are looking at Google and YouTube and trying to find information about this camera. So thank you for watching, and talk to you later, and hopefully you will see more of these videos, smaller videos pop up. I will try to keep the other ones, depending of course on the feature or the bug, to, let's say, between a minute and 5 minutes, so not as long as this one. Thank you for listening, and talk to you later. Bye bye.